All right, welcome everyone. Dimitrius Stone here, your host of BlackMan Let's Talk, a series of podcasts where we talk with brothers in the Sacramento community, positive discussion. What can we do to improve our communities, and just a really sometimes lighthearted, sometimes serious discussion amongst brothers in Sacramento. Today, I'm honored to have Darris Hinson on as our guest today, and really looking forward to an outstanding conversation. So, Brother Darris, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Outstanding. Hey, Darris, before we get started, man, I want to just jump right in and allow you just some time to introduce yourself. Tell the audience your name, maybe which neighborhood you live and work in, the organization or community that you represent, and let's get started with that introduction.
Yeah, my name is Darris Hinson. I'm from the Del Paso Heights community, alumni of Grant Union High School, and I'm currently an educator. I'm the principal at Grant Union High School. I work in a lot of different areas. I have a pretty good past, but right now my work is in education, just trying to help young people get their high school diploma and try to realize whatever their secondary goals are. I also do work in the arts community and try to be as active as I possibly can with issues I'm passionate about being Black, so try to make sure that I have my voice in there. I'm a strong supporter of the arts and culture and young people, everything. So it's all good.
Definitely. I hear you're both a graduate as well as a current principal. So it sounds like that motto we hear, "Pacer for life," is definitely not just a motto, but something you live by.
Yeah, my mentor is Larry Brown, who was a former principal at Grand Union High School and also an alumni. So the school is celebrating its 90th year in existence, and in that time, there have been 3 longstanding principals. 4. Those 4 are Mr. Malcasian, Larry Brown, myself, and Craig Murray. And I say that because Grant has had its most successful years when it has some leadership from the community at the helm of the school. Del Paso Heights, Strawberry Manors, the North area is a very close-knit community. It's we're trying to repair ourselves from just from historical things, but very tight-knit community. A lot of families come through that area and remain. And even if they don't stay there, they make sure that their kids come to Grant. So we have very strong legacy at the school. So that Pacer for Life thing is real, very real.
Outstanding. Man, I love to hear that. You hear a lot from communities of color, Darris, about community pride and how the communities are so close knit, and oftentimes in the in triumph or tragedy, the communities come together. I was born and raised in Oak Park, grew up in Oak Park, went to Sacramento High School. And as close knit as Oak Park is in other communities, honestly, in my opinion, you rarely see that community pride, that giving back, that coming back, that that staying connected with your community that you see in Del Paso Heights and around the Grant High School community. Um, can you tell me what it is that you think makes that community so close knit and so together and remaining tight and relative to other communities?
Um, I think it's multi-layered, but one thing is the thing about Del Paso Heights is the Grant Union High School is the center of the community. So when you look at other communities, there are a lot of resources that are associated with the community. You'll have malls and strip malls and businesses, franchises that are in most other communities, especially now the ones that are surrounding. So if you look at Natomas, look at all of the economic growth that's taking place over just on the other side of the levee. When you look at the Midtown area, and all the growth that's happening in the Oak Park area, in the Midtown area. And then you look at how the South area has stretched all the way out now to Elk Grove, and how many families coming from the Bay Area and different places are expanding. And you look at West Sacramento, how those communities are growing, and there are all these resources there. And then you come to Del Paso Heights, and if Grant Union High School is the center of the community, you can go 5 to 10 miles in any direction and you're not going to find a major anything. So the closest mall is Arden Mall, but it's in a completely different community that is not Del Paso Heights, and there are challenges with that. Um, there are no like Planet Fitnesses or family fitness gyms. There are no major supermarkets like Safeway or Bel Air. There's nothing there. Aside from a few small Black-owned businesses, like maybe a clothing shop and a hamburger stand, a couple of hamburger stands, right? And so when you have a community that's deprived of resources like that, the people tend to use the school, because the school, high schools will have all the resources that a community needs. And so over the years, that attachment to the school as a primary resource, a centerpiece for discussion, for Friday night lights, whether it's athletics, for a community swimming pool, for any kind of resource. It's the largest park if you look at it in that way. Um, Generations of kids coming through playing sports from really young, whether it's baseball, basketball, football. Um, those are the big three for girls and boys. But now I would say soccer as well. Um, when you look at that dynamic, it puts a greater expectation on the school that I don't think a lot of other communities have. And as a result of that, now you talk about of the same families coming through the schools. So as a Pacer for Life, my sons graduated from Grant, both of them. My siblings went to Grant. Um, my plenty other family members went to Grant. I still run with the same core group of people that I graduated from Grant with, even though I've been blessed to, travel the world, and I attended Morehouse College in Atlanta, uh, and so I've had some great things go on my foundation that I got growing up in Del Paso Heights or in the plazas or in the Strawberry Manors, just growing up around in that area, and the connections and relationships that I've built over the years. They remain close knit, and there's a lot of just really strong people that have come out of the community, and they come back and they're very giving. So that has just created this bond that is, I would say, the school, that Pacer for Life legacy is something that we can all bond with, but it's deeper than that because at one point Del Paso Heights was black. It was probably like 85% black.
Right.
Now it's very diverse. Um, Now a lot of the families have moved out of the community, but they still make sure that their kids come to school within the community, even if they don't live there. There's been a lot of growth around the El Paso Heights area, which pulls from the community. So you have Intercom over there, you have Natomas over there. And so as families are trying to navigate how to raise their kids in safe spaces and provide opportunity, they've made decisions to, even if they live in the community, sometimes take their kids elsewhere. So you'll see Pacers show up at Folsom High School and
Right.
Jesuit and Christian Brothers and Sac High and Intercom and the Thomas, but they're still part of what we consider the Del Paso Heights community.
Yeah. Well, thank you around in Sacramento and spent most of my life in Sacramento. Um, that was an incredible description of kind of what makes that that community so close knit. Things that we don't think about, the absence of resources, which draws everyone to that campus, is something many of us aren't aware of. We just think it's just a natural pride in the neighborhood and the community, which there is, but definitely more to that. So, man, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no
Appreciate that.
problem. No problem.
Tell me, you mentioned you went to Morehouse. Tell me, can you talk a little bit about not just why education is so important, but what do you feel that you gained from going to an HBCU, and what are maybe some things that young men, young boys of color, young girls of color as well should consider, or why they should consider an HBCU as opposed to a non-HBCU when considering higher education.
Yeah, I try to explain to families all the time. I feel like I was just in a very blessed situation. So I'm born in 1970, and so that's 2 years after Dr. Martin Luther King is assassinated. Um, a few years after Malcolm X is assassinated. And when you look at that movement period and what was being fought for and what was being asked, um, I believe that my generation and the generations that came after are the real benefactors of what that fight was really about. So coming
Mhm.
up, we only talked about going to college. Of course, little boys have dreams of going to the NFL and the NBA and stuff like that. But that was all. College was a very huge part of that discussion. As we got older, a lot of families from Sacramento got here through the military. So the military was a centerpiece in terms of employment, in terms of bringing families from all over the U.S., but specifically in the South, like Georgia and Alabama and Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi. Um, and so coming up, I've always felt like we were those benefactors of what would be considered the dream. And and then coming up at Grant, um, where it was a predominantly Black school in the time period that I went there. Um, we had people like Alan Rowe, who started UCAN, which is an organization that specifically directs young Black boys and girls to HBCUs. So I'm on that first wave of kids that even discovered HBCUs because we didn't have those discussions when I was in like elementary and middle school. Um, but all of a sudden, I had a teacher named Miss James who was a Spelmanite, and she worked at Grant. And I took her for French. She was a French teacher, Southern Black woman, um, looked like she could have been Creole. Um, First day I met her, she told me I was the Morehouse man. I didn't know what that meant. But in those time periods, we had people like that in our community that made us aware of things like HBCU. So I had Black educators, I had a Black principal. Um, we had Black police officers, the Brookins family, in our community. And so when you think about having those kinds of visual representations of self, strong Black men and Black women, um, when it started coming time for me to choose a college, and HBCU just made the most sense. Um, and when you get to an HBCU, you learn all of the things that the current public educational system in California, I'll say, deprives you, because you don't gain a strong knowledge of self in the educational system in California unless you're in, like, say, Oakland, where there's a strong um, Afrocentric presence that has a historical foundation to it, in certain places in Southern California. But other than that, there isn't a push to really explore Blackness and really feel where your roots are and where that comes from. So I encourage people, especially people of color, Black folks, but also Afro Latinas and Latinos, to explore the HBCU experience, because the first thing that you're going to learn is that you're not the descendant of a slave. You're the descendant of something much greater than what we were demeaned to. You're the descendant of doctors and lawyers and architects and inventors, scientists and politicians, kings and warriors, and the first of everything. And that deep sense of cultural pride and that connection to Africa is something that our kids desperately need, because they don't get it every day. And there are a lot of adults who don't have that historical context. So, whereas we used to have elders that we could sit at the feet of and gain a tremendous amount of knowledge, we don't have that passing forth now. Now, our elders are giving kids in trauma, because the families are going through something and they can't support the kids. Um, Having things like McClellan Air Force Base no longer a resource for jobs and stuff like that, that changes the dynamics of an entire community. Um, Having resources pulled out of the community over decades, and then the crack era, it changes the community. So if we don't have this another foundation that we can refer our kids to, we get what we get. We get what we're getting, right? Um, and so, but I will say that because of organizations like UCAN and Dr. Rowe providing the HBCU college fairs and the exposure, sisters like Rolanda taking young ladies on trips into the South and exploring the HBCU experience, um, individuals who are taking on that original fight that we were exposed to as kids, and making sure that it's at the forefront for families today. It's those individual things that's kind of helping us along. But we have to change our mindset around what we offer as a people. Um, right now, my son is at Morehouse. He's at Morehouse College right now. So that'll be the first legacy um, coming from my family. You know, it's a big deal. Um, but he called me and he was like, Dad, I'll come back to visit, but I'll probably never live in Sacramento ever again. And that's because it's his first exposure to what is real Black excellence. Like, we can go to places, we can go to chocolate cities, and we can see Black people interact in the tens of thousands, and there not be ratchet behavior, there not be fights. There might be shootouts. Like, we're going to get these stories on the news because that's what they do. But when your boots on the ground in these spaces where Black people have influence and control, we don't act the way that we act out here. We are capable of presenting Black excellence. And I think that we have to get our kids out of these spaces that we're in right now, let them explore what Black excellence looks like so they can come back. And then we can have the next Daryl Roberts. We can have the next Rolanda Wilkins. We can have the next, Merv Brookins. We can have the next and the next, and the next Dimitrius Stone. But we don't get that if we don't send our kids to those spaces. So I definitely encourage Black families to consider HBCUs. It's very important.
Yeah. And there's so much in there that we can probably unpack in a 2 or 3 hour show. I think one thing you mentioned, man, it that really struck me a couple of things. One was just some of the shared experiences we had. We were born around the same time. I was born in late '69, so we were obviously born within a year of each other. And the things that you mentioned, my family, my mom's side of the family came from Tennessee. My dad's side of the family came from Mississippi. They met. My grandfather was in the Civil Air Corps, and he brought his family here. He was working at Mayfair or McClellan, I couldn't remember. Which is where, as you mentioned, one of the reasons why so many families migrated west. The crack epidemic, we grew up around the same time, took a lot of my family members succumb to that. So many nuggets in there. One thing that you mentioned, a couple things you mentioned that I want to touch on is getting our youth, our children exposed to new things. I was fortunate in that I was able to travel. I didn't know what options were available to me after graduating from Sakai. I ended up joining the military. A lot of great experiences, a lot of not so great experiences being put in an environment with mostly white men.
Yeah.
But I learned so much. One thing I heard that still sticks with me today that you mentioned is one of the best things that you can get your child as a gift, as a Black parent, is a passport.
Man,
getting them into one of the things I remember traveling to the Middle East when we were, during the Persian Gulf War. We were in either United Arab Emirates or Dubai. I can't remember, but I remember went into a cafe and these two African gentlemen owned the cafe.
Yeah.
And they called a couple of us brothers over. So seeing things like these two brothers owning this really upscale cafe in the Middle East is powerful. It's something that it opens up all these other options and ideas. And man, there's so much out here outside of Sacramento for me.
Yeah.
It gives you hope.
It's important.
Yeah.
And sometimes I just think we underestimate the sheer power of what it is to be Black on a global scale. I tell people when I have an opportunity that Nigeria alone in the next 10 years will have the same population of people as the United States of America. So if there are 250 million people in the United States of America, in the next 10 years, there will be 250 million Black people just in Nigeria. And because of how we're indoctrinated to look at Africa and see ourselves on a global scale, we can't even imagine that. So, and because we don't control our messages, we don't control media, we don't control the images and the information that we receive, we think Africa is this small place full of potbelly kids with flies flying around them. When really, when you go there and you see that they are so much further ahead than us, and we have whole armies at our disposal. We spend our own money with our people on the paper. We have banks, we have militaries, we have everything on the continent, and we're just not exposed to it. And it wasn't until I got a passport that I really saw that for myself. Had heard stories, but it's different when you're sitting there, right? When a black owner, you're in another country, they speak 3 and 4 languages,
Yeah.
including their own.
Right.
Um, they don't even have the concept of not owning, right?
Right.
Um, it's something that we definitely have to do a better job of exposing our young people to.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, you're so right. It's moving. It's
Yeah,
moving for sure.
it is.
You mentioned an experience you had in high school. One of your teachers encouraged you to take friends and identified you as a Morehouse man. One thing that I remember, Darris, growing up, went to Red Heart Elementary School in Sacramento, on to Cal Middle School, and then Sac High. During my 12, 13 years, if you count kindergarten, 13 years of education, I remember having one black male as a teacher. I probably
Right.
had one or two black female teachers, but I remember having one black male teacher in the sixth grade. I don't remember, I remember very few of my teachers' names. I do remember the one black male teacher. It was Mr. Donald Hare. As a matter
Mhm.
of fact, I think his son, Donald Jr., played ball for a while at Sac State. But I remember that teacher, and I remember his face to this day very well. Obviously, as we know, representation matters. Because of the importance of that and the impact that it has on us as Black men, and as a principal yourself, what is it that you think that we can do to get more Black people, males, females, to become teachers, school administrators, knowing the importance of it? Um, can you talk a little bit about what that challenge is like, and maybe what are some things that we can do to steer people into that, people who look like us, into that career path?
Yeah. So I deal with the duality as an educator. Um, uh, if I'm honest, if I didn't work at Grant Union High School, I wouldn't be in education.
Hmm.
There isn't a strong carrot for us to be in the educational system.
Hmm.
That's mainly because we um, we don't exist in the educational system, other
Hmm.
than the identification that we were slaves. We don't exist.
Wow.
Um, so it's amazing to have our children go through 12 years of schooling, and the only thing that they're going to have drilled in their head year in and year out is that this one guy had a dream and that we were slaves, and this one white guy emancipated us. Like, that is the gist of what we learn about being Black in the educational system. So
Hmm.
it's hard to convince somebody that going into a system that so tragically does that to our kids is something that is of value, right?
Wow.
So I'll say that because I believe that's true. The other part of that is that when you think about these incredible Black educators that we may have come across in our time, they also did more work outside of the classroom. Uh, and it's really, that's where they engaged us.
Hmm.
So they had this content that they were paid to teach, but they literally just used that as an opportunity to come and get on campus and do things like coach, or like start a BSU, or start a drum line, or teach some kind of skill. And it's there that those relationships form. It wasn't necessarily through the content or through what was happening at the school. It was that outside influence that they offered, that sneak peek at the world before young people got there. And so when I encourage people to become a part of the educational system, it's usually as an independent. Um, I do believe in education. Um, I do know that you have to have your credentials supported, right? I do know that we need Black principals and vice principals and directors and superintendents and stuff like that. But if we're talking about how to best impact our kids, um, it's having like an IYT or a Roberts Family Development Center or Brother to Brother, or it's really having those outside agencies that come into the schools and provide a different layer of education specifically to our kids, and being unapologetically um, clear that we're here to serve this population of kids. Because if we don't do that, and it becomes just this multicultural way of looking at things, our kids are not going to benefit from that. As a matter of fact, we ask our kids to shrink in education, and what I mean by that is, I had a conversation with, um, won't say a name, but I had a conversation about a push to get more African American students to learn Spanish, right? And that conversation was like all of the opportunities that exist that are available for um, kids when they learn another language. Like I took French, like learning Spanish, like learning Chinese, or like learning whatever. And then they'll say, like, you can do business with the world, and you can do this and you can do that. But what does that mean when our kids are boots on the ground trying to navigate in these communities that don't necessarily value what we bring to the table, other than the service of it? So that's what I mean by asking our kids to shrink, because we learn these other cultures, we learn these other languages so that we can shrink and fit within the progress and the structure of those communities. When conversely, we come from a continent that have more than 200 languages, right? That was ripped from us, and without any intent of ever helping us regain what we lost from a cultural standpoint. The ability to communicate in language is one of the most powerful business tools that you will see around the world. It's how we can get cut out of business on so many different levels, because we can't communicate with each other in an authentic, genuine way. But when you see other people come and set up shop in our communities, they can operate within our communities and never even have to speak to us other than to take our money. And I'm not pointing the finger, or I'm not hating or whatever, but um, if we looked at that and we started having conversations like regaining our language um, from a young age, and exposing ourselves to authentic, what it means to be authentically Black, um, that changes our dynamic. So it's difficult for me to say, come into this system and let's just do more of the same, because it just doesn't benefit our kids. It's easier for me to say, know what this system is, create a program, create a movement, create something that you can attach to the current system so that we can get our kids in a different trajectory. And whether it's, trying to get them to HBCU, trying to regain our historical value, even trying to regain our language. But we have to do things that are counter to what they're getting in the classroom every day, because it's not a reflection of them. And that's why our kids really struggle with academic achievement. It's like, you're asking me to sit in here all day, and all of the things that make me unique in who I am are the things that you tell me aren't good. So shut up and be quiet. Like that's not what it means to be Black, where we come from an oral tradition. We have written language. We were the first to have it, but we speak. We're communicators. And so when you shut kids down and put them in this box, um, it doesn't fit. And then it's like pulling teeth trying to get you to educate, because it's like, I don't want to, y'all talk back too much. You don't listen. You don't this, you don't that, and then, with our trauma that we've had in our community, it is difficult to educate our kids. So we definitely need people to come from the outside into the school system, pull our kids out, give them what they need, but send them back in there with the understanding that you're in here to learn this system, get through this system, so that you can get to where the education matters most. And I would say that's at an HBCU. That's starting a Black-owned business. That's learning financial literacy and economic development. That's taking control of our athletic industry that we completely dominate, but we don't own. It's all of those things, right? So I know it's kind of a long answer, but I don't feel always comfortable just saying, hey, yeah, become a teacher. It's rewarding. It's this, it's that. Yeah, the benefits are great. The pay isn't. Um, what you're asked to do is to shrink. Is to shrink the very kids that you come to serve. And so I know that's not a popular thing, but that's our truth. And I don't think we say it enough. What we say is, you better go to school and you better get your books and you better learn this and you better listen to that teacher. And, that teacher doesn't even know where the hell you're coming from, and they don't care. So I don't know, man. We have to do a better job of pulling our kids out of that system, pouring into them, and then sending them back into that system with tools and with a mindset that this is what I'm trying to accomplish using this system to get me there. Because that's what we did, right? We used that system to get us to a place. You used the military. I was able to use an HBCU. And that's where everything started to click, when we were able to get ourselves into that system. But if I have a criminal record at 16 years old, how am I going to get into the military?
Right. It's designed to not allow you in.
Yeah. So,
yeah. No, but I don't feel that was a long answer at all. That was incredibly authentic and real response, especially someone coming from someone in the position that you are. I say this all the time. It's unfortunate, and I've found myself, having to realize that, I've had to wear a mask at certain points.
Oh yeah.
In my life, and we all as African American men are asked to do that, or we realize that in some aspects we have to do that. And you're right. It's man, it's a topic that has so many layers and facets to it. Some of the things that you mentioned, though, like learning a foreign language. I was fortunate to, when I joined the military, someone saw my potential for learning, and I was actually taught Russian, and I was a Russian linguist in the military. And I've had so many of my peers and former Marines that I served with, who I still keep in contact with, and they say, you could have gone into one of the three-letter agencies, the FBI or the CIA, or become in law enforcement, because there's a heavy Russian-speaking population in Sacramento. But I never thought that I wanted to use that as a further career. To me, I was just proud that I did something that was really hard. And that was what I got out of it. I learned an incredibly hard language, and it allowed me to do something else, because I didn't want to do all that other stuff that you're supposed to now go into, because you did that. So yeah, to your point, I used a foreign language. To me, wasn't to be able to communicate with other people and make money, although I can see why some people would want to do that.
Yeah.
It was more, I was just proud that I did something really hard.
And when you see us on a global scale, Black people are linguists. Like everywhere else except America, Black people speak at least 2 to 3 languages.
Man.
You know,
Yes.
when you come across an African, they're going to speak minimum of 3 languages,
Right.
right? They're going to speak their tribe, they're going to speak English, and then it's going to be something else. It's going to be
Yeah.
Chinese, or it's going to be Spanish, or but it's going to be something else. Minimum of
Right.
3, right?
Yeah. That's powerful. Also there's in America when Black Americans, when we hear a person of color speak another language, um, to us it seems foreign because we've been, for whatever reason, so conditioned to, oh, that's not how we talk. It's not something we're used to or accustomed to.
Yeah.
But you're right, that's so powerful. One thing I wanted to touch on, Darris, you mentioned, which is so true. We all come from trauma. I think it's just safe to say, we've all probably seen things and been through things that we probably were not designed for a 5, 6, 13, 14-year old boy to see. Um, and it shaped us. In some cases, it's hardened us. Um, I know self-care is a huge buzzword the past couple of years. Um, what do well, first of all, what do you do for self-care, and what are some things as you work at Grant High School? Obviously you come in contact with a lot of young boys and girls. What are some things that you encourage for self-care, whether it's sleep patterns, exercise, diet? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, all of that. I personally have a very strong vitamin regimen. Um, I I use a lot of holistic and natural supplements just to make sure that my immune system is in order. That I'm monitoring things like my heart, my blood pressure, and my focus, my mental focus. But you definitely have to be active. I was an
Yeah,
athlete. I played football, um, and um, also a commitment to the arts. You constantly have to push yourself to critically think about how we see things that are in front of us, and being able to. It's not necessarily I'm able to do it in a more abstract way, but we have to have an opinion and a narrative about the things that we're seeing. So, uh, and we have to talk to each other. We have to share our experiences in health, in mental wellness, and our regimens that we use. Because what you don't know, you just don't know. So, I had a dear friend when I turned 40 was like, "Man, do you take vitamins?" Just like a real simple conversation. Like, do you take vitamins? And I was like, I don't. I don't. He was like, "Man, you should take at least one multivitamin every day at the minimum." But now the holistic medicine field has gone to a place to where you can truly address a lot of health health conditions without having to take the big pharma synthetic drug movement, and being aware of what that can do, um, is conversations that we need to have with young people. We used to have that nutrition chart when you were a kid, and how unhealthy that is. Like when you look at nutrition for like breakfast and stuff like that, we have to redefine what nutrition is for Black folks. Like, we
right.
know that we come from a slave diet. We know that we shouldn't be eating pork. If we are, we know that we should. It should be in moderation. We know
Yeah,
that we got to take a lot of that salt out of our food. Like, we know these things. We know that dairy products can be challenging,
yeah,
um, and we have to have those conversations. And there's so many people, Black folks, out there that are sharing healthy recipes that don't compromise, the quality and the seasoning of our food, because that's big to us, right?
huge. That's
Um,
huge.
we are having conversations around, growing, becoming more agriculturally adept and growing our own food. And
Yeah.
but it's really bringing more people in that discussion and really just talking is communicating. It's using platforms like this
Yeah.
to talk about mental health, because it's amazing how many people are dealing with mental health issues that I just don't remember it being like that when I was a kid. Like I don't remember autism as
Right.
a kid. I don't
Mm.
I don't I know that we have dark histories in our communities, that leftover trauma from slavery and from our history, but I don't ever remember it being so prevalent in our kids. Um, just in terms of gender identity, depression, anxiety, bipolarism, um, anger, um, violent anger, rage, even. Um, I I know it was there. I'm not oblivious to that. I
Right.
think the crack epidemic definitely exposed that,
Yeah.
that level of trauma to a different degree. But where it is right now, we have to spend some real time with our community dealing with mental health.
Yeah.
And it has to come from a professional standpoint, from a therapeutic standpoint. It has to be consistent, and
Yeah.
because it's just a completely different time. So the kinds of
Yeah.
things that I see on a daily basis with kids, you can see what's happening at home by how the kids show up um,
Yeah.
at school, and it is at crisis level in our community, and
Yeah.
it's not a ghetto thing.
Right.
It's a Black thing,
Right.
and we have the resources to deal with it. There are enough educated Black people who have the expertise for us to solve the problems in our community. What we don't have is the platforms and the organization that puts people in place to do this work. And and it's in those areas, and it's not like this monolithic thing. It's mental health, it's physical health, it's spiritual health. Those three, and also I would say political health as well. But definitely mental, physical, and spiritual health have to become primary concerns for us.
Yeah. That's huge, and that's powerful, and hopefully through platforms such as these, we're not only having that conversation and encouraging others to have that conversation, but also potentially building the platforms. It's you and I, and all the gentlemen that you mentioned, your Mervyn Brookins, your Daryl Roberts, continuing that dialogue and maybe coming together to create that platform. But I think you're spot on. Whether it's the crack epidemic, whether it's social media, what I see a lot of it is kids are self-diagnosing because they have these supercomputers in their pockets and in their hands, and they're reading, I feel this way, or I feel, oh, that's me. Oh, so I'm bipolar then, or I have depression, or I should be identifying as this. Um, it's that incredible easy access to information and misinformation. Um, which there's so many things that could be driving that, as you mentioned, but
And it's also
I
synthetic drugs, man.
yeah,
I can just remember as a kid, if a person was open about using like acid and shrooms and you know coke
yeah,
and lean and all this kind of stuff, man, those are the kind of people that we were not going to be in my circle.
nope,
Period.
nope, yeah,
Now, people are drawn to that because
right,
in addition to these mental health challenges, they're using these synthetic drugs and these different things to suppress and to diagnose and treat. and
Yeah.
with no resources, because
Right.
we don't have those kind of clinics. We don't have those social. We don't have anything for vulnerable citizens in the United States of America.
Yeah.
So Black vulnerable citizens are even at higher risk.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely right. That's yeah, very insightful. Very insightful. Hey, Darius, before I let you go, man, it's been a great conversation. As I said, we could probably talk for a couple of hours. Um, you mentioned about the the number of principals at Grant High School. I think you mentioned in the 90 years there've only been 3 or 4 principals, which to me is
From the
amazing.
community.
From
Um,
the community.
yeah,
My
yeah, yeah.
apologies. My apologies.
The school is most successful when it has leadership from the community. So,
Okay.
so the longest standing, the oldest principal, white guy named Mr. Malcasian. But Mr.
Mhm.
Malcasian brought Larry Brown in. Larry Brown was his
Mhm.
vice principal, and then Larry Brown went on to become principal of Grand Union High School. And
Okay.
he was principal for more than 15 years, off and on
Yeah.
at Grant.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that for
Yeah,
me. Appreciate it. As a long-standing Sacramentan and just a huge high school sports fan, I'd be remiss if I let you go without talking about the Grant football team. I think anyone who follows high school football knows that Grant probably produces, and I don't have the data to back it up. I'm just going off of
mhm,
what I know, what I've seen, but um, quite a bit of D1 players, NFL players, etc. Um, really curious about how the football team is doing. I know you have a new coach, which is a big change. The past 20 or 30 some odd years, you maybe had the same coach. Curious how the football team is doing because it's such a pillar of the community. And also, is there a future home game this year that you'd recommend I attend to? Because I want to definitely come and catch a game.
sure. So I think Grant is experiencing a reemergence. I believe every football program in Sacramento has gone through what we went through, especially the last 3 years, in terms of not having the success that people are used to.
Yep.
Um, and it had to do with the transition from Mike Albergini to um, and what I call a very figurehead driven uh, football program, because everyone talks about this one person, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
but we all know, if we are on the ground, that it was much more than that.
Yep.
Um, so in that transition, now we have what's closer to what has been a vision and a hope for mine in a Grant football program, and it's comprised of some of our greatest athletes to come through the program. So the
Mm.
current head coach is Carl Reed, who is an alumni, and Sidquan Thompson,
Yep.
who is the brother of Shaq Thompson. Um,
Yep.
and they have come in the transition from Coach Al to completely change the mindset and focus of what it is to be in the Grant Union High School football program. And as a result of that initial transition, we had a horrible year. We didn't win a game last year, and the city took aim at the
Mm.
program. We took some real deep L's, man.
Mm.
This
Yeah.
year we're 6-1.
Outstanding.
Um, our toughest contest is going to be this week against Monterey Trails.
Hmm.
Um, that's going to really decide what our playoff fate could look like. If we beat Monterey Trails, then we could go into the playoffs as a Division II school. If we
Mm.
were to lose, we could go into the playoffs as a Division III school.
Okay.
And the impact of that, uh, right now, because there's such a large influx of people coming into Sacramento, these school districts are growing
Yeah.
exponentially. So, like the Elk Grove School District, the majority
Yeah.
of the schools are well over 2,000 students.
Yeah.
We're right at 2,000 students. So
Yeah.
even though we've had tremendous success, like at D1 and D2, we've always been a Division II school that's overachieving,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so it's a good resurgence. It feels good to
Yeah.
have the program moving in the right direction, having kids buy in. We are getting tremendous looks. Like right now, I think Grant has more kids in the NFL
Yeah.
than, like, we're the top 10 in the nation of having that many kids in the NFL right now. We also have some kids, uh, trying to get into the NBA, playing overseas. We
Mm,
have kids, trying to get in Major League Baseball. Um, so we have a very long history of having strong athletic programs. But when
definitely.
football is good, the community's good. And
Yeah.
this year we're pretty good. This year we're
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, we're much better. Much better.
Outstanding. That's good to hear. Yeah, as a fellow, or I'm sorry, not as a fellow, but as a alumni of Sac High, I can definitely relate. There was that 60s and 70s period where Sac High was a powerhouse, and then during the time you and I were in high school, I know at one point we had a 28 game losing streak, which was 2 or 3 years of 0-10.
Hmm.
And since the past 10 years or so, that program has seen a resurgence as well. So to your point, you're right. Enrollment changes, dynamics, community changes. That's just a natural ebb and flow. I'm super happy to see Grant High School having that resurgence because for me, high school in this region is more fun when you have one of the schools that is primarily made up of young boys of color that is also playing at a competitive level. So great to hear that. I'm definitely going to try and see a game before this year is over.
Yeah, I would. This Friday we play Monterey Trails. I think that's gonna be a good contest. That'll be a big game.
Outstanding. Yeah, and it's
Um,
always fun to see the just the community show up at Grant High School with the drum line. That
yeah,
is one of the most. I try to see a few games every year, and that is one of the more electric home crowds and environments on Friday nights.
yeah,
So
we definitely try to recreate the HBCU atmosphere
yeah,
with the drum line and the pacerettes and just the whole culture. Um, and it does feel good when we're in there and everybody's there to support kids and represent the community. I do just want to put it out there. There are a lot of Pacers all over Sacramento, and I just encourage you all. Grant is a safe school.
yeah,
We have a lot of great programs to offer kids. We have a lot of strong supports at the school. We have 4 academies. People don't know that. We have a criminal
mm,
justice academy that's ranked um, within the state of California's top tier academy. We have environmental science. We have health sports, and we have the arts academy. We have Avid. We have dual enrollment, so that you can take college courses while you're in high school. We have Avid. We have JROTC. We have AP. We have very diverse advanced placement course offerings. So it's not this ghetto school where you could find yourself in this conundrum of lacking opportunity. We actually offer a lot. And what we need is those parents that are taking their kids to these schools thinking that um, for some reason that they're going to be able to serve their kids better. I would say nobody has done more for Black and Brown and Asian students in the city of Sacramento than Grant Union High School. You can look at
yeah,
our graduations every year. It is 100% kids of color. And we're sending kids off to great schools. Um, and we're really helping kids realize what they want to see in the future. So it's important that we have good families bringing good kids into our environment so that we can just continue that Pacer legacy. And they're out there. So you Pacers, come home.
That's right. Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. And it's an organization that has programming at your school. I've only had the opportunity to visit with our program manager there once or twice. I can absolutely say that Grant High School has some of the most resilient, creative, intelligent young brothers on campus, and the enthusiasm there for not only our program, but many of the other programs, and just the school pride is something that I don't see being replicated at a lot of other campuses. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Darris, with that, man. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I also want to just shout out our poly community too. It's good to have our poly community back on campus too.
Yep. Appreciate that. Darris, man, it was a pleasure getting to know you and to chat with you. And I really look forward to spending more time on the campus at Grant when I can, and to hopefully stopping in and seeing you and spending some time chatting in person.
All right.
It
was a pleasure talking to you today, man. I appreciate you inviting me on your platform. Feel free to call on me anytime.
Sure will. Likewise. Thanks so much, my brother. Take care.
Okay. All right. Take it easy, man.
Bye-bye.